Chapter 4, Is This Your Freedom? I'm reading Situationship, my book, How to Stop Breaking Your Own Heart. You can grab it on my website. Link will be in the description. And you can support me as well by sharing this and telling me what you like about it. You can message me at Fopsy the Great, Fopsy the Great, wherever you internet. Everywhere on the internet. Okay. Chapter 4, Is This Your Freedom? Situationships, as you have read, happen when poorly defined relationships meet with contradictory words and actions, along with mismatched commitment levels. One reason why this style of relationship seems to be so pervasive is that freedom is a very misunderstood term in today's world of dating. Under the guise of freedom, modern dating renounces boundaries and instead promotes emotional and sexual intimacy without commitment. But is this really freedom? To be uncertain about a person's intentions, to continue acting in ways that are contrary to what you say, to be unable to dream of a future together. Is this your freedom? If you are dissatisfied with the stress-inducing, undefined relationships that surround you today, you are rejecting this way of dating that considers boundaries as bondage. Timothy Keller did an excellent job of describing freedom as choosing to live within the right constraints. He said, modern people like to see freedom as the complete absence of any constraints. But think of a fish. Because a fish absorbs oxygen from water, not air, it is free only if it is restricted to water. If a fish is freed, in quote, from the river and put on the grass to explore, its freedom to move and soon even to live is destroyed. The fish is not freer but less free if it cannot honor the reality of its nature. That is such a big line that I'm going to come back to. The same is true with airplanes and birds. If they violate the laws of aerodynamics, they will crash into the ground. But if they follow them, they will ascend and soar. The same is true in many areas of your life. Freedom is not so much the absence of restrictions as finding the right ones, those that fit with the realities of our nature and those of our world. I think the biggest thing is that we like to lie to ourselves, and this is me going off script once again. We like to lie to ourselves about our nature as human beings and our desire / ability to thrive when we have clarity about what is happening, right? We think that we are so good with ambiguity, with that our nature is, flexible, and that there isn't a reason why we've evolved to this state where we like to be in committed relationships. And also coupled with the fact that the world is changing so rapidly, globalization means that everybody is becoming more westernized, more like what the American and European world deems fit. Then we're losing our cultural values for those that have them. We are wanting sameness with people that seem freer. But is America and Europe really free when it comes to relationships? Do we really want to model all parts of our lives after them? Is it really free to have such a high prevalence of mental health disorders, high prevalence of suicide, trigger warning, sorry, to have such a high prevalence of lack of community bonds, to have such disregard for the family unit? Is that really freedom? Is that really the best that we can do with our lives? Or should we all really be examining if what is popular is what we need, right? The fish isn't free outside of water because water is the environment is made to thrive. So should we also be figuring out what the environment we are made to thrive is? And I understand that in one way, that's the definition of freedom, to be able to determine what your own freedom is. I get that, but we still need boundaries. I think that's what I'm getting at. We still need boundaries even within that. Yeah. Okay, let me get back to the script. I love that quote and the way it calls the laws that keep us in check, honoring the realities of our nature. Somehow, modern dating has many believing that our acceptance of boundaryless relationships make us free, but they do not. Denying the reality of our nature and desire for security, attachment, intimate relationships, and a sense of belonging does not make those realities any less real. Freedom is not the absence of boundaries. What it is understanding the limitations of your nature and living within the limits that you have thought about and have chosen to live within. Okay, my current self is still in line with my self that wrote this 5 years ago, I guess. Because I just essentially went on a rant to say that if you have never thought about why you do things the way you do, you may be enslaved by society's rules. If you have never established your boundaries, you may have been living by rules that society has come up with by just going with the flow. There's another saying that says it's only dead fish that go with the flow or something, but take what you will. Back to the script. Our acceptance of boundaryless relationships does not make us free. Instead, they go against fulfilling our innate desires for love and belonging. There is no denying that the people we choose to be in a relationship with should create an atmosphere of safety that we can rely on. There are other key players like family and friends that help meet our emotional needs and provide a sense of belonging. However, we should be able to rely on our partners as stable sources of love. Keyword stable, right? Uncertainty and inconsistency in relationships go against our inbuilt desires for safety and stability. Because we long for a sense of security and belonging from our partners, they must be reliable with their love and affection. Look at old Fopsy speaking bars, or young Fopsy rather. Boundaryless relationships rob you of precious time. They may also teach you lessons that you could have done without, and ultimately they leave you scarred. You can choose to develop your boundaries in your relationships and watch these relationships thrive and bloom into something beautiful. Or if an intentionally crafted relationship ends, it leaves you with minimal scars and no deep wounds. Well, no, I don't really agree with past Pops in that sense. I do think that we can still get hurt by relationships we get into intentionally. But it just, back to the title of this book, How to Stop Breaking Your Own Heart. It seems really silly, stupid, honestly, to be intentionally breaking your own heart. Like, to know that something is going to end in heartbreak and still go for it. And so, if you end a relationship that you intentionally got into, then that's just the same thing as getting into an accident even while you had your seatbelt on, even when you did all the things you're supposed to do. Parts of the risk of living that you cannot avoid. So that would fall under the task of the risk of loving that you cannot necessarily avoid. But doing this, getting into situationships, is the equivalent of removing your seatbelt, not choosing to wear a seatbelt, and driving recklessly, right? It's like you're asking to die, essentially, when you know that the better way, So yeah, that's an addition, an edit now. And so I'm not saying don't drive, don't get into love. I'm saying do it with the right check rails, guardrails in there, the right checks and balances. Don't break your own heart. Why do you want to do that? Okay, to keep reading, there's a group of people who stay in situationships because they assume that the kind of relationship they want is unattainable. Perhaps you think your desires are the stuff fairy tales are made of. You may believe that the type of relationship you want is too good to be true, so you settle for the available situationship. After all, half bread has got to be better than none. This assumption makes sense when you think about some of the counterproductive situationship behaviors. Why would you stay with someone who has explicitly declared their lack of interest in pursuing a relationship with you? Or with someone who is hinting at this with their actions? Or worse, why would you keep doing or accepting emotionally and physically intimate acts that are reminiscent of a romantic relationship with this person? I guess it may feel like at least my inconsistent lover is still mine. Better this inconsistency than loneliness. And I think that's facts. And that's one of the big reasons to just be completely vulnerable, that loneliness feels like really bad, feels too simple to describe it. It feels like too weighty, too much, too uncomfortable. Yeah, too uncomfortable, too weird, too. I'm not able to do. Oh, I will love, or comments God went on someone's picture. I'm not able to relate, yes, to this relationship thing, and so. And loneliness is not even only something that happens when you're not in a relationship, it's just when you're isolated. And I think I get to it later in the book. But to be fair, it is stressful when things are lonely. And so I understand why it may feel like at least my inconsistent lover is still mine. Better this inconsistency than loneliness. But everyone else who sees the contradictions in the relationship, it looks and smells like self-sabotage, knowing that something does not work, but still insisting on investing in it. There is another group of people who stay because they have no clue what better looks like and therefore do not know what to expect in a healthy relationship. People only know as much as they have seen, read, or been told. And that's why you have to do your best to acquire knowledge. I love that you're reading this, listening to this right now because you're learning. But don't stop here. On every area of your life, relationships, business, which is another part that I have, dove into recently. Not recently, but like more so now as a business coach. Like, you have to get knowledge. There's so much you don't know. And what you don't know is hurting. It's hurting how financially stable you are. It's hurting how emotionally well you are. It's hurting how much work you're even carrying in your head. So like, gain knowledge. But on the flip side, make sure you gain knowledge from resources that you trust, people that you trust that know what they're saying, have the results you want, or that you just trust them that they have your best interest at heart because of evidence you have seen. Back to reading. I have to stop segueing so much, but I enjoyed. People only know as much as they have seen, read, or been told. I believe the absence of clearly understood relationship scripts in the 21st century is another top cause of situationships. A relationship script, like a movie script, is a description of how things should play out in a relationship. Relationship scripts are culturally shared social norms that guide relationship and sexual behavior. And I quote Simon and Gagnon, 1986. It is how we see others live out relationships and come to expect as the standard way of doing things. If you were reading this in the 18th century, arranged marriages would be the default way of doing things. You would be looking up to your parents to select a suitor for you. Now, we have long ditched the arranged marriage setup and have moved on to self-selected relationships, which may or may not lead to marriage. A lot got thrown out there. Between these two extremes of arranged marriage and self-selected relationships, thankfully, poverty, politics, wealth, and inheritance no longer dictate who people get to marry. However, modern relationship scripts are now so poorly defined that it leaves a whole lot to assumption. Do guys always have to ask girls out? Do you need to get parental consent? Can you just do whatever feels right? It sounds liberating that we all now get to create customized relationship experiences. In practice, we may have traded relationship ideals in exchange for doing whatever feels right. However, the reality is that we have not wiped the desire for traditional, well-defined relationship paths from our hearts. Having no clearly defined relationship scripts, no model of how things should evolve, and in many cases, no guidance leaves a lot to assumptions. Because nobody teaches you or the person you will date what dating means and how to do it well. There is no predefined way for a relationship to evolve. But the strange thing is, most modern daters assume that their date has the same expectations of a relationship as they do. In order not to fall victim to the assumption-based dating model that creates situationships, you will have to discuss what you want in a relationship with your potential partner. Big one. You have to talk a lot about what it is you want. Because you cannot just assume that you all are on the same page, because the world is not on the same page about relationships. And you don't know what they want or what they've grown up around, what they consider normal or what you consider normal. So you have to ask questions and be willing to share yours. Also kind of assume that you spend time figuring out your own answers so that you have an idea of who will be a fit for you or who will not be a fit for you. Okay. You also have to be willing to leave. By the way, that was the segue. The last word I should have read was you will have to discuss what you want in a relationship with your potential partner. You also have to be willing to leave if what you are being offered does not match your needs. Otherwise, you'll be working off the assumption that you are both in a relationship for the same reasons when you're probably not. Some other situationships happen because of unhealthy expectations or past experiences. Still others happen because there is no clear understanding of the purpose of a relationship. Dating as a Christian has to have marriage as its direct goal. This is not to say that you must marry anyone you date. What I'm saying is that as a Christian, the purpose of dating is to seriously evaluate the person you are curious about to determine their suitability for marriage. I highly recommend Boundless.org's blog series titled Biblical Dating, How It's Different from Modern Dating, for a guide on how to date. So go to Boundless.org. Honestly, I binged that whole website and their podcast when I was single, like for maybe close to 10 years, maybe a little less, about 7 to 8 years. listened to so much from Lisa Anderson, who's the host of the podcast. The blog is one of the resources I recommend you binge if you are a seriously single person. And it's not for young people alone. Lisa at the time was like in her 40s and single, so she has lived experience of waiting for marriage beyond what she would have expected would be her normal. So highly recommend. That is yet another segue. So you know what? I think it's fine because I'm the author, so I get to, make creative edits. I like that it is appropriate for people of marrying age as well as teens who are curious about a better model than the world is presenting. Regardless of why you got into a situationship, so that I was referring to the blog now, that it's if you want to share with your teens what to expect in a relationship and marriage, boundless.org is still a really great website to share with them. But if you're an adult as well of any age, from 20 to 50, is still a good resource for you, even older grandparents who want to learn about how to help their grandchildren. Okay. Regardless of why you got into a situationship, it is not an ideal place to be. There is no need to keep enduring a suboptimal state of being. If you choose to continue in a situationship, you are mostly just waiting for your heart to be broken. Maybe not today, but very soon. So what can you do? Not only to end the current situationship, but to prevent future ones. The next section talks about personal problem areas. They are kind of like factors that may predispose you to enter suboptimal relationships. We'll explore what these problem areas might be and how to work on them. That's the end of chapter 4 and the end of part 1 as well. So join me for the other readings. I know you've enjoyed my book, Situationship, How to Stop Breaking Your Own Heart up to this point. Now it's time for you to take it further. Buy the book at the link in the description. You have immediate access to the ebook. And you get to read it in your own time and also reference as a guide because you'll be coming back to it. So get the book right now, don't delay. And when you enjoy it and you want to send screenshots to your friends, feel free to tag me at Fopsy the Great when you share it to your story. I just love hearing your experiences reading it. Thank you. Buy my book, link in description, and share it. I appreciate your support. Don't forget to do the rest of the things, subscribe, follow, blah blah blah.